So welcome. I have with me our Chief of Police and our Assistant Chief, Prattle. Really, we wanted to get the media together to share some information, to share some numbers and some data. Certainly, whenever we have an incident, we come in here and we brief the media and the public on each individual incident. But it came to our attention recently, as we looked at crime data, that in the last few years, we're actually seeing crime numbers go down. In the aggregate, when you look year over year, total numbers, we're seeing them go down, not just the crime numbers going down, but the public perception of our police officers going up. And we see that through an independent evaluator called Zen City. They've been doing surveys for us for years. They do them for communities all over the country. And so we're seeing the numbers go in the right direction. So again, while we certainly want to update you as there are issues of concern in the community, we also think it's a good idea to update the media on these positive crime data and public perception numbers. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the chief, and he'll share some info, assistant chief, and then we can take questions. This is more supposed to be like a round table rather than a big stand-up press conference, and happy to take questions after that. Chief.
Thanks, Mayor. So even though we're here to talk about some positive trends in our crime stats, I do want to start out with giving an update on a shooting that we had last night. So we reported already that last night around 9:45 p.m. we did have a shooting that occurred in the area of Willow and Grand River. In this instance, a 21-year-old male was shot and seriously wounded and transported to a local hospital. Our officers have been investigating since that incident happened, and currently we have 5 people of interest detained. That case is currently under review at the prosecutor's office. The people involved range in age from 35 to 19 years old. And the charges that we're currently looking at stem from assault with intent to murder to weapons possession, illegal weapons possession, and aiding and abetting, which is assisting in a crime. Still an active investigation. Like I said, it's under review and no one has been officially charged yet, but we'll keep you updated as this progresses. Now on to the reason that we're here, which is talking about some of our statistics from over the past year. So we did see significant positive improvement in a number of categories that we consider to be very serious crimes. I think everyone here knows that we've updated our public about violent crime statistics, specifically those related to shootings and guns. So I'm happy to report that in the past 12 months, we've had a 20% reduction in fatal shootings, an 11.5% reduction in non-fatal shootings, and a 32% decrease in overall shots fired incidents. So that's defined as any time that we investigate a crime or we know a gun was actively used. So of course our fatal shootings and our non-fatal shootings, but we also have instances where guns are used in drive-bys, or we get reports of shots fired and we respond to the scene and we just collect casings. Regardless of what the instance is, when we're seeing these decreases in firearm crimes, we know that we're making positive progress. There's other categories that are significant as well. I'm happy to report that our robberies are down 27.5%. Those kind of numbers are significant. And of course, really, these all stem from the increases we saw post-2020, 2020 and 2021. So we've been declining since then. But we're now declining at a rate where I think we're going to start making some very significant progress, and hopefully, rather than being at the highest crime rates we've ever been, we're going to start trending downwards, and hopefully, with the systems we have in place, start reaching the kind of numbers that we've never seen before, the lower numbers that we've never seen before, because of the people that we have in place. Anytime that we see progress like this, it's important for us as an organization to take a step back and start analyzing, why are we seeing this progress, or why do we think we're seeing this progress? So some of the things that we've done internally with our detective bureau, we've started putting in more resources to our non-fatal shootings, bringing in more detectives for these type of incidents, so that we're putting the most talented and skilled personnel we have at these investigations on the front end. Because we know that if we don't solve a non-fatal shooting and we don't have charges, that there can be additional incidents, things like retaliation. And it's not just our detective bureau, we're doing this with our patrol division too. So one of the bad things that comes from increased numbers with our homicides and non-fatal shootings is we get more exposure to it. So what we're seeing is the idea that our officers know how to respond to these type of incidents. They know where they're seeing the biggest benefits from. So when our patrol officers are responding there, they understand the importance of scenes, they understand the importance of collecting evidence, they understand the importance of finding witnesses, and they know what that does when combined with our detective bureau and their skill set in terms of identifying people and obtaining charges through our prosecutor's office. We also have a lot of specialty teams that come into place. Probably our most prevalent one that we use in our violent crime area is our violent crime initiative. And so when we have an instance like this, if our violent crime initiative members aren't working, we bring them in immediately so that they can start on the streets trying to round up people that may be missing from the scene, something that our patrol officers don't necessarily have the ability to do when they're still responding for calls. So what we've seen is a shorter time period from when a crime happens before we're actually taking an accused into custody. And again, the benefit to that is the idea that when you have some type of resolution, you have some type of charge from this, you're taking away instances where the people involved are out on the street, and then we have the possibility of retaliation, where one incident grows to 2 or 3. So our hope is that by putting these additional resources out, that we're addressing the problem, and that's leading to a reduction. You know, outside of our resources, we're also evaluating our practices in terms of how we're doing what we're doing and what resources in terms of not just people, but technology we're using. One of the things we found most beneficial is to educate and inform our public, talking to people about what may be behind a lot of these spikes in crime. One of the things that all of our violent gun-related crimes have in common is, in fact, guns, and trying to find out where are these guns coming from. And unfortunately, what we see is patterns where people who are legally and lawfully owners of guns are having the firearms stolen. So relaying to them what safe storage looks like and identifying certain things that we can provide them, like gun locks, so that if they don't have that already, we're giving it to them. But then also telling them about their practices. It's not responsible to leave your gun unattended in your vehicle overnight or at any period of time. It's a target for theft. And once somebody steals it, you lose control of where that goes. That's the number one way our prohibited persons are coming into possession of firearms. So if we can address this on the front end with the legal owners and having them be more responsible by educating and, again, providing them some resources, we know we're going to see an impact later on down the road. And we did this year. We saw a 30% reduction in stolen firearms. So our hope is this message is getting out. And there's been some laws enacted as well to show people this is a priority. And there is a responsibility that comes with gun ownership. We're also looking at technology. So investing in people, investing in technology. We've brought in crime gun intelligence into our investigative set. So the idea that our ATF partners and our Michigan State Police partners, when we seize a firearm and we collect casings, we can bring those to their stations where they have tools that analyze those. So we can connect the actual guns to the evidence we find at the crime scene. And we're doing that faster. With some partnerships we've developed, we can do that as fast as 24 hours. That's in the best case scenario. And that makes a significant difference when you have people that are detained and you can confidently say that the gun we've recovered is the same gun that was used at the crime. What this really comes down to, though, when I look at our decreases, it really comes down to the strength of our partnerships. And even though we had an unfortunate incident with a shooting last night, what transpired after that call went out is a great example of how we're operating. So just to give you an understanding of what happened, simply went by our dispatch putting out this call and our officers responding there to investigate this. That call went out to Lansing Township. Lansing Township came into the area. Lansing Township officers located the vehicle that was involved in this crime. They detained the subjects that we currently have in custody. They recovered the firearms that we currently are using and looking at for being related to this crime. They were assisted by Eaton County. Our detective that is investigating this is from our Michigan State Police Secured Cities group. So Michigan State Police has detectives that work with our detectives. And so it's one team looking at this. And we look at the idea that crime doesn't know jurisdictions. Our officers are obviously bound by their departments, but if we're going to do this right and we're going to make an impact, These partnerships mean everything to us in bringing people in and allowing us to go different places and have different skill sets. We look at our victim in this case. To our knowledge, our victim is not a City of Lansing resident. Our victim lives outside the City of Lansing and was visiting here. So this is something that impacts everybody. And if we're going to make the biggest impact and have the most success, those partnerships mean everything. And that's just the law enforcement partnerships. Last night, anytime something like this happens, we call our prosecutor, John Dwayne, and we let him know what's going on and what we're investigating. He assigns people so that we have a dedicated point of contact as we move forward. We've seen a change in the commitment from the prosecutor's office. So throughout 2020, we saw more charges for people that were illegally carrying firearms, people that were previously convicted felons that were carrying firearms, people that had long histories, criminal histories, who then got caught up in additional violent crimes. Our prosecutor takes that very seriously, and we're seeing the impact of it. We've also seen that with our United States attorney. He has a program, our U.S. attorney, Mark Totten, had a program the last several years called Safe Summer. Last year, we had 14 cases from the City of Lansing that were adopted federally. And a lot of those cases involved previously convicted felons, and I should say convicted for violent crimes, who were in possession of illegal guns or guns that had illegal devices like Glock switches, which turn a firearm, a handgun, into a fully automatic weapon. That's a big commitment from their office, knowing that they deal with the entire western side of the state, to give us the attention where 14 people were charged federally. And one thing that we've learned, as the mayor said, one thing we've learned with the public perception and public trust through some work from some outside polling groups is that with our post-police reforms from 2020, trust is everything. And as we start meeting with different community groups, coming to the table with people we've never sat at before, earning their trust through open dialogue and transparency, that's making a big impact. The other part that we're learning is that everyone wants a seat at the table when it comes to addressing crime, and we're open to that. It needs to happen. And we don't necessarily need to lead, but we want to be involved. We want to be people that are providing information that other groups can do something with. So not only do we have law enforcement partnerships, and I should mention not only just the law enforcement partnerships with our local jurisdictions, but our prosecutors, Department of Corrections, and our federal agencies as well. We have a lot of partnerships that we've never had before or are strengthened with our community groups. So people that we're sitting down at the table with that we necessarily haven't sat down and talked about violent crime are people like Community Mental Health, Department of Health and Human Services, other departments within the city, like the neighborhood safety, our faith-based organizations. The more we've talked about violent crime, the more people have come and said we want to help. And so in the past, we've had this problem where we've pointed fingers at each other, and when something like a shooting last night happened, we looked for blame. No one's doing that right now. We're coming back to the table and saying, what happened, why did it happen, and where can we help? And the people that we're seeing come to the table have a skill set that we don't have. They have connections that we don't have. So anything that we can do as an organization to support them to do their jobs better, that's where I believe that we're seeing a lot of our decreases from. Helping enable people, inform them, and engage with them. And there's groups that have always existed and that we're excited to continue our partnerships. Not only our faith-based organizations and their mentoring programs, but groups like the Mikey 23 Foundation, who through a tragedy in our city, which involved the loss of a child, has sought partnership with the police department to engage our youth. That's where we're seeing our trust. The idea that through our public polling, we are seeing the largest, highest trust numbers we've ever seen since we started this in 2020 is not by accident. It's very deliberate. And it's hopefully media messaging like this that's getting the word out as to what we're doing and how we're doing it and how much we care. And then the final thing I always want to note is that it's not just the police that are engaging in these violent crime efforts. We have groups like Advanced Peace out there who operate in their own realm with our support, vocally with our support, knowing that they know how to engage people that are involved in criminal lifestyles that we don't know how. They know names of people that we'll never know. The idea that we tell them we support them in what they're doing and we'll support them any way they need it, and letting them do their work, because they know how to do it. And groups like Lansing 360, which looks at something that they want to bring anyone who wants a seat at the table in addressing violent crime. People that, you know, we don't normally sit with in, for example, our hospitals. Our hospitals are stepping up to the plate and saying that they recognize that violent crime has taken a toll on the number of patients they have, their volume of patients, and that anything that they can do to help the entire community reduce those numbers will play a positive, or have a positive impact on all of us. So while I sit here and say that we have some fantastic numbers and the city of Lansing should feel safer and should be very proud of their police department, we should be proud of our entire city for everyone who stepped up in the past year. And I know this is going to continue.
Thank you, Chief. And I was writing down notes, and he was kind of knocking them down as I went, so I don't need to add a ton. But I do want to send also a shout out to Advanced Peace, the Lansing Empowerment Network, and Lansing 360. When you look at some of these numbers, what you don't see are numbers of retaliations. A lot of times, if you have an event, the Advanced Peace folks are there right away, going in to take the temperature down, make sure there's not immediate retaliations. We worked with them and the hospitals to get those folks in to get in and tell someone, hey, you know, don't retaliate, don't send other people out. It's making a difference. The interventions that we have working with fellows, people who are at risk of violence, to do that. Again, we want to make sure we have justice. Our plan has always been prevention, intervention, justice. But the prevention and the intervention are certainly the most important parts, because we'd rather not get to having to find justice for people. That being said, you'll see on the chart our clearance rate is 88%. I believe we have one outstanding case for the whole year last year, and something that you all reported a lot on and that we talked about were cold cases. You get cold. A case doesn't get cold if it's closed, especially when it immediately happens and we can get that information. So again, our police working with others who might be able to produce tips and things like that. We stood up in City Hall, myself, Sarah Anthony, a variety of others, and said, you know, this snitches get stitches has to end, because we need to know who's creating these issues. And working with groups like Lansing Empowerment Network, working with groups like Advanced Peace, folks who have their hands in areas that our police officers may not. These things are making a difference. So that's what I've got. I don't know, Chief Prattle, if you had anything you wanted to add.
No, I think just to sum it up, it's just a multitude of different internal and external factors that play a role into all this, and I think the Chief hit on everything, and just goes to show that it's definitely a community effort for all of this.
Yeah, and actually, let me throw in one other kudo to our community service, our Lansing Community Service. When we talk about prevention, intervention, when you look at prevention, our community service folks are all over the city. Whenever we do bike giveaways, whenever we do, you know, hot dog events with neighborhoods, whenever we do community resource, you always see our folks, our officers there talking to kids, giving them stickers, and they have some of the best swag in the city. But that's on purpose, right? That's building trust with our youth. So when our youth see someone with a badge, they feel like they can approach that person. When you look at our community policing officers, we spend a lot of time talking to businesses and to residents about community policing. So having folks there proactively. Again, all of these pieces to the puzzle that the chief and the assistant chief are talking about, these are all the pieces that we had talked about when crime spiked during the pandemic, when we couldn't be out there talking to people and relating with people, when our community service folks couldn't be bringing people together because we weren't allowed, when the thefts of guns were at the absolute height. These are the pieces that we proactively wanted to put in place. And you know, I'm excited to see this chart. I hope you all will publish this chart, but it is working. And we will. That doesn't mean, you know, we're done, right? We're gonna stay vigilant. We're gonna continue to support our social workers, to support our community policing officers, to provide justice for those when an incident happens. These are all things that are important and will continue. So I think that's what we've got, and certainly welcome to take questions from the media or have a conversation.
If we can, let's talk about the numbers a little bit that you guys were mentioning. Are these year-over-year numbers? Are we talking like 2024, basically, compared to years prior you're talking. It's
Yeah.
not like late January 23 to, late January 24. These are year over year, right? These numbers you're talking about. Do you guys know how Lansing fits into the larger scheme? Crime and violent crime in particular, it goes up and down.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether what we're seeing here in Lansing is different in any way than what we've seen overall in Michigan or the Midwest, if you follow
Yeah.
my question.
I know going to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, a lot of communities are seeing these reductions, but a lot of communities are taking the same actions that we did. It's not something that everyone has. We're all different communities, but everyone understands the same benefits of CVI work, of community violence intervention work, of closing cases, of utilizing social workers. A lot of the things that we have done in the last 5 or 6 years are things that other communities are doing as well. We started community policing here, and we know others are doing that. And I think that's making a difference in a lot of places. Chiefs, I don't know if you have seen anything here in Michigan or Denver's.
So one thing I can say, we are seeing similar results, but not everyone is fitting the same trend. So there's a city on the west side of Michigan that has a great department, has great community support, has great resources, but their homicide rates aren't dropping. And that's unfortunate because they're doing everything right. They're following all the same models. But something is just not clicking with the people who are engaging in this type of behavior. So we are very fortunate that we are doing the work and we're seeing the results.
Chief, really quick, you talked about the shooting last night. You first said there were 5 persons of interest. Then later you called them suspects.
So I would use that term interchangeably. They're suspects, they're persons of interest. I mean, right now, after a crime has occurred and we've developed our suspects, we'll present that to the prosecutor's office. We have to wait for the prosecutor's office to actually confirm and say, yes, we see the probable cause that you're presenting to us, and we're willing to charge these people with specific crimes.
But they're technically not suspects until they're charged, essentially.
I would say that they are suspects until they're charged. I would say that right from the beginning, when someone is suspected of committing a certain crime or a certain type of behavior, we can use the term suspects.
Okay, so it's safe to say 5 suspects as opposed to person of interest.
Yes,
Okay.
It's safe to say suspects.
Chief, you talked about some of the community partnerships that you guys have with Mikey 23, and there are a lot of organizations that really focus on sort of youth intervention. Could you talk about the kind of age range of the folks that are involved in a lot of these incidents, and how young some of those ages are, and the efforts to kind of be preventative in getting in there and helping these kids out before there is a crime to even discuss?
Absolutely. We saw a reduction in the age of people committing serious crimes in 2020 and 2021. And so when you see something like that, you're obviously going to focus on that and put a lot of resources into that age range. You had programs and organizations step up and said, we want to be involved. And I'll tell you, a lot of them existed already. We just weren't utilizing them, and we didn't know about them. We weren't at the same table, so to speak. In 2024, we had a 17.5% reduction in juvenile arrests, and that coincides with a reduction in juvenile crimes committed. So we are finally seeing that number come down. If you're talking about the age range of people that are involved in these crimes, unfortunately, we are still seeing really young ages involved in serious crimes, teenagers, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, that we're not used to seeing. That didn't happen prior to 2020. But just like I reported from the incident last night in the shooting, the lowest age range in our suspects was 19, and our highest age was 35. So we still do see that, I would say, a typical range of 18 to 26. That's what we would typically see involved in violent crime. That's still very prevalent in what we're seeing.
And it's also important when you talk about, an organization like Mikey 23. His attitude, his saying is, pick up a hammer, not a gun. So when you support groups like that from age 12 on up, from age 8 or, as young as possible, he is getting folks into trades and getting them off the streets and getting them repairing houses. And it's a great effort. Same with the Boys and Girls Club. You go there and you see kids after school on computer or doing activities. A lot of these are for younger kids, and if they don't participate in that, then we could see them on the streets. So a lot of the work that we do in prevention is making sure that there are options.
I think jumping off of that point too, this is probably more a question for you, Mayor Shore, talking about more the holistic approach to addressing gun violence, and kind of talking about these other factors that are at play, like housing, like socioeconomic situation. How do you guys address how that goes beyond just law enforcement? You touched on community mental health and a couple of other things. But what does that look like future tense of kind of addressing some of these issues that come around gun violence and push it forward?
Sure. Well, certainly continuing things to do, right? When you get into the summer, having camps and having options available for our youth. The chief mentioned the Lansing Empowerment Network and the Lansing 360. They're actually working on a jobs program that we can utilize to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to get jobs. Sometimes there are folks who don't know how to do that, and a lot of these folks in the Lansing Empowerment Network have reach into areas that traditionally have not, and are getting some of these young people who may be at risk for future violence into job programs, which, again, we like to borrow and steal from other communities. They're borrowing and stealing that from Omaha. And in the Omaha 360 program, they've been doing it for something like 18 years, and they've been very successful with getting young people into jobs and seeing young people crime coming down because they're into jobs. And again, we're not going to wait 18 years. We're going to steal their platform and use it, and Omaha is fine with that. So I give credit to the Lansing 360 folks, to Mike Lynn and a few others, to going out and doing that. Not just saying we're going to rely on just the city or just the police department. Everyone's coming together to do this together. Again, we're at the table every Wednesday, but they're also branching out and saying, we all have to help. It can't just be pointing fingers, but we all have to help. And I see that as a benefit. Again, we do things through our Parks Department and Parks and Rec, and we have programs. We support camps with city funding. We're getting lots of different groups that are doing things like Mikey 23, like Boys and Girls Club, just tons of those. Turning Point. If you look at Turning Point, we give them funding, and they do things for young men of color. These are organizations that are very helpful, but again, getting into communities that have not been able to access some of these options in the past, we're taking that on now, and it's helping. And again, with this jobs program and other things, the future looks bright because we're providing more options, more opportunities. Plus, the more guns we can get off the street, the more that's not an option. I always talk about, when I was young, if two people got into a fight, they used their fists, and it was unfortunate, and someone had black eyes or broken arms or something. Now, guns are prevalent, and when there's a fight like that, they're pulling out guns. We got to get the guns off the street. Now, we don't have the option to do things under state law, like prevent guns or anything like that, but we do have a violent crime initiative, which is a partnership with the county, with the state, with ATF and others, where we can get guns off the street. We take about 500 guns off the street. So we need to continue to get guns off the street so they're not being used. We need to make sure that the safe storage laws that the legislature passed are being used. Again, we'd rather persuade people don't put your gun in your glove box rather than having to cite them or fine them or arrest them for leaving the gun in the glove box and not safely storing it. This isn't about penalizing, this is about preventing. So all of these pieces are important in keeping the guns off the street so that when tempers flare, guns are not an option. We have to prevent that. So again, all of these pieces, I think, are part of the plan and the puzzle. And again, I'll never claim victory. Not when there's one incident will I claim victory. But the numbers are going in the right direction, and that's a good thing. And we will keep the work, we will keep vigilant, and we will keep the work going.
We talk,
On that point of wanting to keep the work going, we've talked a lot of the programs that worked and the ones that we want to continue. Is there any new ideas that you want to add in the same bent to these new partnerships that get you excited for 2025?
We'll keep utilizing every option we can. Again, looking at Omaha 360 and stealing some of their things, looking at what other communities are doing. Every time I go to a conference, the chief will laugh, every time I go to a conference, my directors hate it because I say, this city's doing this, and this city's doing this, and this city's doing this. So if I'm gone on a Friday, they got 10 emails, almost all of them, and they're looking at things and saying, yep, we've tried that, no, that doesn't work here. So we will keep trying things. You talk about technology. We haven't, we're talking about cameras, right? We are putting cameras throughout the city, making sure that we are upgrading the cameras so that if someone does something, we can get there and we can respond quicker. We have the evidence for the prosecutor. So we want to make sure we've got all the tools. We're certainly hiring as much as we can. We finalized a good contract with the union, and now we've been able to hire, and we've got folks in the academy, and we've got our cadets and our young people who are interested in being Lansing police officers, especially from here. We need to be fully staffed. Again, fully staffed doesn't just mean going after crime. It means proactive. The more fully staffed, the more we can have 11 community policing officers. The more we can have a community service division that are going out and playing basketball with kids. The more we assist with the PAL program, which was in our budget that the police requested, the more proactive we can do. These are all things that are on our future list, things that we're trying to do now, but ramping up. And then again, stealing ideas from any other community where something's working. We'll try anything, almost anything, to make sure that we are using all of our tools and our options. I don't know, gentlemen, if you have anything else you're thinking of.
No, that was
Chief,
perfect.
really quick, first and foremost, let me just say these numbers are remarkable. From 2021, me covering the fatal shooting, so like they're down a lot. But can you talk about this year specifically? Are we on trend to seeing another reduction? Number of non-fatal shootings and fatal shootings so far this year.
I think it's too early to talk about that. I mean, we talked about a shooting that happened last night, and what I'm trying to really impress is the idea that we're responding differently last night than what we did in 2021. And I think you're seeing the result of that, the idea that less than 12 hours later, we have suspects identified, we have people in custody, and now we're presenting a case to the prosecutor's office. It's my hope with the idea that when detectives get a better understanding of what led to that shooting, we'll share that information with the groups that need it. And so there won't be a follow-up shooting to that. And that's where I think we're going to have the biggest impact, is the idea of not only being very efficient in how we're investigating, but also having that effectiveness of swift accountability, sharing information, and to steal somebody else's line, knowing what lane people are in. So it's not our lane to go out and do a lot of community outreach with specific populations, but we know those groups now, and so when we share that information, that's what they want to do.
Yeah, and being 28 days into the year, it's tough to predict. But certainly, it's exciting that we're able to see these numbers, and our drive is to come back next January and show you further reductions.
And I want to talk about the cameras specifically too, because I think it was back over the summer at maybe March to Prevent Violence. You had mentioned a situation specifically where something was caught on, I think, a Ring doorbell camera that helped you guys kind of move forward with the case. Talk to me about the kind of community, community watch element that comes into this too, and helping people kind of keep those resources like gun locks and cameras and other things that they can have to help out too. What do those efforts look like?
I'll put a plug in for one of the programs we have called SCRAM, which is the Security Camera Registry, and it's for both private citizens and businesses. And it does not give us access to your cameras. It simply lets us know that there's cameras in the area, that if something happens, we can call you up. And we use that a lot. When something happens, just the prevalence of people with the doorbell cameras or businesses and houses that have the outside footage, that's what we spend a lot of our time doing now. So we've transitioned from just relying on people that were at the scene to now trying to find other ways that we can get an understanding of what happened from things like cameras and technology that will have some type of recording that we can use. It's safe to say that, if not 100%, nearly 100% of the cases that we're bringing over to the prosecutor's office and we're successfully charging has camera footage. It just tells you the importance of it.
And we utilize ARPA dollars. So again, thank you to the federal government. We utilized ARPA dollars to get new cameras. When we came in, we were using these old analog cameras, so we'd get the camera footage once redacted. LPD would have to send to the prosecutor, but it wasn't good. I remember my first year, 7 years ago, there was an incident and we couldn't even make out the license plate. So now we are upgrading cameras. Our IT are looking at the appropriate systems for Wi-Fi and all of that. Our cops all have body cameras, and honestly, it's something that's good for the public and it's good for the officers, because we want to make sure we have an actual accounting of what we're seeing when we see it, and getting some of those cameras in better shape is a good thing, and then using the Scram program where we know who's got cameras. I get people who call me or run into me and say, hey, there was someone driving by my house real slow last night. I'm afraid that they're casing the house. I've got Ring or Vivint or whatever my camera is. Can I send you the footage? I'm like, yes. This is what our officers want to see, so that way they've got that information and it helps to solve the crime. So that has definitely been a tremendous advantage. We got to go. I see Scott trying to lean in. Thank you all so much for coming out today. I do really appreciate it. Again, we wanted to share this information. We'll continue to be transparent with the media. Certainly, you all know Jordan and Scott, so if you can't get any of the three of us, which is most of the time, you can get Jordan and Scott all the time. All the time. And anything else?
Can I steal one more question with you guys? Actually, something I really wanted to touch on was 2025 looks a little bit different now that we're already kind of seeing a presence of ICE in some parts of the state. How does this play into 2025 now? What are the plans or expectations? If there's going to be any cooperation with those folks? It's kind of a new element to our law enforcement coverage of the area that I wanted to ask both of you guys about what the plans are.
Yeah, I'll let you address kind of the part, but we've got a policy in place that is in place since before I was mayor. Lansing City Council passed a sanctuary city, and then they repealed it 2 weeks later, or a week later, and the previous mayor put in place an executive order, which I have continued for 7 years now. It basically says police officers are police officers. They are not immigration agents. So our officers are going to continue to do their job. They're going to continue to, go after crime and arrest people that are creating crime and do proactive work. And ICE is going to do their job. We're hearing all the rumors and hearing that they're in Chicago, and we're hearing rumors of where they're at. And I think there are some folks who are nervous because of all these rumors. But at this point, our officers, in my opinion, under our policy, they're going to do their job as officers. They are not immigration agents. They're not trained as immigration agents. We're not paid by the federal government for our cops to be immigration agents. So they're going to continue to do their job, and we're not going to prevent folks from coming into town and doing federal work. We don't actively, prevent, but our folks are going to do their job as police officers.
Anything to add, Chief?
Yeah, to the mayor's point, I don't think you'll see a change. The executive order has been in place since, I believe, 2017. And for us, it's going to be business as usual.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right.